You've gone across the country. You've talked to a lot of people. You've come up with a new economic approach. How much of it is really new? Because in reading through it, it sounded vaguely familiar to a lot of things we've heard out of Democrats in the past.
Well, I think it is vaguely familiar because essentially it's talking about jobs and it's talking about helping Americans make it in America. That was the message in the last election, the election before that. It is the message that resonates with Americans because they know if they're going to be successful and their families are going to be successful, they need to have good jobs at good pay. We've talked about better deal. We talk about an agenda that is for the people. The people are focused on their economic well-being. That's what they really care about. They care about their health care as well. They care about investing in their kids' education. So the Make It in America agenda, which you're right, is not brand new. It was I fashioned it 8 years ago in 2010, and it resonates with Americans because Americans came from so many lands. Why'd they come here? To make it in America, to succeed. What we've focused on is education and job training for 21st century jobs. We have 6 million jobs available in America that are being advertised that can't be filled because we don't have a match with the skills that Americans have. So we need to invest in their education and their skills training. In addition, we need to make sure that Americans have the capacity to start new businesses, to grow jobs in small businesses. That's really where your jobs come from for the most part. What we want to do is make sure they have portable benefits so they can leave the job they have and start a new business and be sure that they have health care benefits and long-term pension benefits. We also need to make sure that they can get capital. So that's part of the Make It in America agenda. And lastly, we're going to be talking about infrastructure. Now, the president talks about infrastructure. Democrats and Republicans talk about infrastructure. We know we have to invest in building the infrastructure of our country, not just roads and bridges, but the grid, the internet availability for our communities, to invest in our water systems and sewer systems. So you may say, well, we've heard this before. Well, we have, but we need to do it. Well, okay. We need to do it.
Fair enough. And I don't have nearly your experience going across the country and talking to people. But as you say, this is close to what the Democrats said before. And it didn't get the House majority you wanted last time around. What's changed since then? Because if anything, far fewer people are out of work. So you can't go out and say, boy, there are a lot of people out, more people out of work. And since you've had tax cuts, and a lot of people have more money in their pocketbook. So if that's the approach, why is it going to make people switch from Republicans to Democrats?
Well, let me first of all say on your tax cuts, the American people, the majority of the American people think the tax cuts were for the rich, and they're right. When you say they have more money in their pockets, they don't notice it. You see poll after poll saying, well, that tax cut was for the wealthiest in America. And again, 83% went to the wealthiest 1% in America. So we think that's a winning issue for us. They're worried about losing their health care. We think that is now a winning issue for us. Connor Lamb, in a district that Trump won by 20 points, won arguing both on the tax cuts and on health care. But let me say something about jobs. The issue in the last election that was responded to was jobs. This president said he was going to make America great again. He said he was going to invest in education and in building jobs. He said he was going to invest in infrastructure. In point, he hasn't done that. Yes, the economy is doing reasonably well, and that's good. Very frankly, we think it's the Obama economy. We've had a straight line up over the last 10 years approximately. That was the Obama investment in building the economy. We'll see what happens over the long term. And the tax cut that we saw not only has not really driven jobs to be created at a greater rate than were created under Obama, but what it has done is it has increased by 100% the deficit that we had in 2015, the operating deficit.
Okay.
So we think we have good arguments. We think the American people are going to respond. And that's why the polls show that the majority of people are going to vote for Democrats to be the majority in the Congress next year.
So you're talking about the issues. How do you think voters will respond to party identity? Because you mentioned Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania. He's a centrist. And yet you also have Ocasio-Cortez in New York, who's more of a progressive. So does this risk, while you get into the midterms, of a party identity crisis?
Well, I don't think we have a party identity crisis. Connor Lamb campaigned as I think Alexandria would, on the fact that the tax cuts were for the rich, and we needed to protect the Affordable Care Act and protect Americans' availability of accessible, affordable, quality health care. So they both argued that premise. Our party is united. You see that in the votes cast on the floor of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And we are united in being for the people, being for their health care, for their education, for their economic opportunities.
And Conor Lamb was also the first person to test the anti-Nancy Pelosi message when he ran for the March special election in Pennsylvania. You have Ocasio-Cortez also saying that she's not really answering whether or not she will back Ms. Pelosi here. Will the leadership issue become a hot topic going into the midterms? Will more Democrats have to come out against Nancy Pelosi in order to flip those red districts?
No, I don't think that's the case. This election is going to be which party is for me, which party is for my family, which party is for my children, which party is prepared to invest in infrastructure that I know is going to be necessary if we're going to compete in the 21st century for jobs around the world. That's what this election is going to be about. That's what Make It in America is about. That's what the For the People agenda is all about. And I think that's what people are going to vote on.
Finally, Congressman, isn't there a difficulty with that message in this sense? President Trump, whatever one might think of him, is very effective at appealing to his base, specifically saying your life is not better, and it's because of things like the Chinese. It's because of things like trade. I'm going to fight for you. What's the Democrats' point of view in terms of fighting against whatever is hurting Americans in places like Michigan, in places like Wisconsin, places like Ohio?
Well, the Make It in America agenda speaks to that, as does the better deal that we've talked about and the fact that we are for the individuals. And we have historically been for making sure people can make it in America. And we're going to press that argument. Very frankly, the soybean farmers in America don't think that Mr. Trump was thinking of them when he started a trade war. And they're really hurting. Other farmers are hurting. Did we need to deal with China? We did. But did we need to deal with China in such a ham-handed fashion that adversely affected our closest allies as well? The answer to that is no. Is it hurting our people? The answer is yes. Harley-Davidson apparently didn't think it was very positive because Harley-Davidson, an iconic American manufacturer of its motorcycles, as you saw, just moved some jobs overseas. So we think that we're going to be able to make this message to the American people, and as a result, we think we're going to take back the House in November.